returning home on my first flight. Stepdad's welcome back turned into a painful blow. I never thought my first solo flight would end with me bleeding on my childhood driveway. But there I was, 25 years old, college-educated, and supposedly sophisticated, lying on the cold concrete while my stepfather stood over me with rage in his eyes that I'd never seen before. The man who'd raised me since I was 7. The man who'd walked me down the aisle at my college graduation just 3 years ago. The man who'd just struck me so hard I could taste copper in my mouth. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, because the thing about family secrets is that they don't reveal themselves all at once. They unravel slowly, thread by thread, until you're left staring at a tapestry you never knew existed. My name is Charlotte Whitmore, and this is the story of how one homecoming destroyed everything I thought I knew about my family. Part 1. The Golden Girl. Growing up as Charlotte Whitmore meant growing up with expectations. Not the suffocating kind that you read about in novels about dysfunctional families, but the gentle, persistent kind that wraps around you like silk scarves until you can't remember what it felt like to breathe without them. My mother, Catherine Whitmore, Catherine Montgomery before she married my stepfather, came from old Boston money. The kind of family that had portraits in the hallway dating back to the Revolutionary War. My biological father, James Whitmore, had been her college sweetheart, a charming architect from a middle-class family in Connecticut. They'd married young, had me, and according to the version of events I grew up with, he'd died in a car accident when I was 6. I barely remembered him. Just flashes, really. The smell of his cologne. The way he'd lift me onto his shoulders. The sound of his laugh echoing through our old house in Cambridge. What I remembered clearly was the day Robert Harrison came into our lives. I was 7 years old, wearing a purple velvet dress that I hated because it was itchy, and my mother had brought me to some charity gala at the Boston Public Library. I remember being bored out of my mind, counting the marble tiles on the floor, when this tall man with kind eyes and salt and pepper hair crouched down to my level. "You look about as thrilled to be here as I am," he'd said with a conspiratorial smile. "Want to go find the chocolate fountain with me?" That was Robert. Always knew exactly what to say. Always seemed to understand what people needed before they knew it themselves. He was a self-made man, which in my mother's social circle was both impressive and slightly scandalous. He'd built a successful investment firm from nothing, climbing from a working-class neighborhood in South Boston to penthouse offices downtown through sheer determination and an almost preternatural ability to read markets and people. He and my mother married when I was 8, and honestly, I was thrilled. He was patient with my childhood tantrums, generous with his time despite his demanding job, and genuinely seemed to love my mother. He adopted me formally when I was 10, and I took his last name hyphenated with my birth father's. Charlotte Whitmore Harrison. It felt like a bridge between my past and my future. Robert moved us from Cambridge to a sprawling estate in Wellesley. The house was beautiful, a restored colonial revival with 6 bedrooms, manicured gardens, and a swimming pool that gleamed like a sapphire in the summer sun. My mother continued her charity work, serving on the boards of various cultural institutions. Robert worked long hours but always made it home for dinner. We took family vacations to Martha's Vineyard, to the south of France, to Aspen for skiing. From the outside, we were perfect. The American dream in an expensive frame. I went to private schools, of course. First Wellesley Middle, then Dana Hall for high school. I was a good student, not brilliant, but conscientious. I played field hockey because that's what girls like me did. I had a close group of friends whose families moved in the same circles as ours. We spent our summers at beach clubs and our winters at ski lodges. When it came time for college, I chose Brown University. English literature and art history double major. Practical enough to please Robert, who worried about my employability, but artistic enough to satisfy my own inclinations. I'd always loved stories, Loved the way words could create entire worlds. I'd fantasized about becoming a writer, but that felt too impractical. Too risky for someone with my background. College was liberating. 4 years in Providence, away from the expectations and the social obligations of Wellesley. I made new friends from all over the country, dated a few guys, discovered I had a genuine passion for 19th century literature, and generally figured out who I was when I wasn't being Charlotte Whitmore Harrison, daughter of the Harrisons. After graduation, I did what many directionless liberal arts majors do. I moved to New York City with vague plans to work in publishing, or maybe at a museum. My parents, I called Robert Dad by then, it felt natural, helped me with the deposit on a small but charming studio in the West Village. Nothing too extravagant, but enough to keep me safe and comfortable in an expensive city. I spent 2 years working as an assistant at a mid-sized publishing house, reading manuscripts, making coffee, and dreaming of the day I'd edit something meaningful. The pay was terrible, even with my parents' help, but I was happy. I loved the city's energy, the feeling that anything could happen. I dated a fellow editorial assistant named Marcus for about a year. Nice guy, but ultimately it fizzled out when he moved to Chicago for a better opportunity. Then, last spring, I got an opportunity I couldn't refuse. One of my former Brown professors, Dr. Eleanor Simmons, was leading an archaeological expedition to Turkey. They were excavating what they believed was an ancient library dating back to the Roman period, and Dr. Simmons needed someone to help catalog and analyze any textual fragments they discovered. It would mean 6 months in Ephesus, living in basic conditions, working long days in the dust and heat. I know it's not exactly publishing, Dr. Simmons had said over coffee in Greenwich Village. But Charlotte, this is real. This is history we're uncovering. And you always were one of my best students when it came to analyzing ancient texts. I'd taken Latin in high school and college, another thing that girls like me did, and I genuinely loved it. The precision of it, the puzzle of translation, the thrill of connecting with voices from thousands of years ago. I said yes before I could overthink it. My mother was supportive but worried. 6 months is such a long time, darling. And Turkey, is it safe? What about your job? My publishing house job was a dead end anyway, and we both knew it. After 2 years, I was still making coffee and answering phones. Robert was more pragmatic. If this is what you want to do, Charlotte, then do it, he said over dinner at their house the night before I left. You're 25. This is exactly the time to take risks. The safe choices will always be there when you get back. I remember hugging him that night, feeling grateful for his understanding. He'd always encouraged me to be independent, to not rely solely on the family money. You never know when circumstances might change, he used to say. It's important to know you can stand on your own feet. Looking back now, I wonder what he meant by that. What he knew that I didn't. Part 2. 6 months away. Turkey was everything I'd hoped for and nothing I'd expected. The dig site was located near the ancient city of Ephesus, on Turkey's western coast. We lived in a compound of basic housing, essentially glorified trailers with temperamental air conditioning and Wi-Fi that worked maybe 3 days a week. The work was physically demanding. We'd be up before dawn to take advantage of the cooler morning hours, working in carefully marked grids, painstakingly brushing away centuries of dirt and debris. My job was to work closely with Dr. Simmons when they uncovered fragments with text, pottery shards with inscriptions, pieces of papyrus or parchment that had somehow survived, even pieces of the building itself with carved letters. It was meticulous, exacting work that required intense concentration. Every fragment had to be carefully photographed, documented, preserved. I'd spend hours hunched over work tables under awnings, using magnifying glasses and specialized tools to clean and examine what we'd found, making preliminary translations, cross-referencing with known texts and inscriptions. I loved it. every single exhausting, sweaty, frustrating minute of it. Our team was small, about 15 people from various universities and institutions. There was Dr. Simmons, of course, a force of nature in her early 60s with more energy than people half her age. There was Mehmet, our Turkish liaison and expert on local history. There were graduate students like Priya and Chen who were working on their dissertations. And there was Daniel. Daniel Reeves was a British archaeologist in his early 30s, specializing in Roman architectural history. He was tall and lean from years of fieldwork, with sun-streaked brown hair and the kind of accent that made even the most mundane observations sound sophisticated. He was brilliant, funny, and completely unpretentious despite having degrees from Oxford and Cambridge. We became friends first. The dig site was remote, and our social options were limited, so the team became close out of necessity. We'd have dinners together, sharing whatever we could cook or whatever local food we'd acquired from the nearest town. We'd sit under the stars, drinking Turkish wine and discussing everything from ancient philosophy to terrible reality TV shows we'd watched back home. Daniel and I would often end up working together, since his architectural knowledge complemented my textual analysis. He'd identify what type of building a fragment came from. I'd translate any inscriptions we found. We made a good team. About 3 months into the expedition, something shifted. We were working late one evening. We'd discovered what appeared to be a private library, and Dr. Simmons had authorized extra hours to properly excavate it before the weather turned. Daniel and I were alone in the work tent, examining a remarkably well-preserved piece of painted plaster with Greek text inscribed on it. "It's Sappho," I said, excitement making my voice shake. "Daniel, this is a fragment of Sappho. Look at the meter, the word choice. I need to photograph this. We need to get this to Dr. Simmons." I was babbling, the way I always did when I was excited, and when I looked up, Daniel was smiling at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "What?" I asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Nothing. It's just nice to see someone get so excited about words on a wall. Words that are over 2,000 years old, written by one of history's greatest poets, whose work mostly exists now only in fragments quoted by other ancient authors," I countered. "This is a big deal." "I know," he said softly. "That's what I mean. Your passion for this, it's infectious." That was when I knew. Maybe I'd known for a while and hadn't wanted to admit it. I was falling for Daniel Reeves. We took things slowly. Working and living in such close quarters meant any relationship would be under constant scrutiny from the team. But we'd take walks together in the evenings, exploring the ancient ruins under the moonlight. We'd sit together during meals, our legs touching under the table. We'd find excuses to work together. About a month before the expedition was scheduled to end, we finally acknowledged what was happening between us. It was simple. We were sitting on a wall overlooking the excavation site at sunset, and he reached over and took my hand. "Charlotte," he said, "I'm not sure how to do this properly. I've been trying to be professional, but I don't think I can pretend anymore that I don't have feelings for you." I kissed him. It seemed like the simplest answer. The last month of the expedition flew by. We kept our relationship mostly private, not secret, exactly, but low-key. Dr. Simmons knew, of course. She didn't seem to mind as long as it didn't affect our work, and it didn't. If anything, we worked better together, more in sync than ever. We talked about what would happen when the expedition ended. Daniel had a teaching position at University College London waiting for him. I had to figure out what to do with my life in New York. Neither of us wanted to do long distance, but neither of us wanted to make hasty decisions either. "Let's just see what happens," Daniel said one night as we lay on a blanket under the stars. "You come back to the States, settle in, see how you feel about New York. I'll go back to London, start teaching. Maybe you can come visit for Christmas, or I can come to New York. We'll figure it out." It seemed reasonable, mature, We were adults. We could navigate this. During those 6 months in Turkey, I'd kept in touch with my parents sporadically. The Wi-Fi situation made real-time communication difficult, and with the time difference, we mostly exchanged emails when I could get online. My mother sent chatty updates about their social calendar, about her garden, about their plans to renovate the kitchen. Robert's emails were shorter but warm, asking about the work, encouraging me to make the most of the experience. I called them maybe once a month on video chat when the connection cooperated. They both seemed fine, normal. My mother looked a little tired maybe, but she was approaching 60, and she'd always been involved in a million different projects. Robert seemed the same as always, composed, confident, asking intelligent questions about the dig. There was no indication that anything was wrong, no warning signs that I could see. About 2 weeks before the expedition was scheduled to end, I sent them an email letting them know my flight details. I'd be flying from Istanbul to Boston on October 1st, arriving in the evening. I was excited to come home, to see them, to sleep in a bed with good pillows, to eat food that wasn't cooked in a camping stove or brought from town. My mother's response was enthusiastic. She couldn't wait to see me. She'd make my favorite meal, her roasted chicken with herbs and those scalloped potatoes I loved. She'd air out my room. She'd stocked my bathroom with fresh towels. "Come home soon, darling. We miss you." Robert's response was shorter. "Looking forward to having you home, Charlotte. Safe travels." I didn't think anything of it. That was typical Robert. Economical with words, but his meaning was clear. The last few days of the expedition were bittersweet. We were wrapping up the season's work, carefully packing up all our finds, securing the site for winter. Dr. Simmons was already planning next year's dig. There was talk of me coming back, maybe making this a regular thing. I was non-committal. I needed to figure out my life first. Daniel and I said goodbye at the Istanbul airport. His flight to London left several hours before mine. "This isn't goodbye," he said, holding me close. "This is just, see you later." "See you later," I agreed, fighting tears. I watched him go through security, tall and lanky in his field clothes, carrying a battered backpack. He turned back once and waved. I waved back. Then I settled in to wait for my own flight, feeling that particular emptiness that comes from leaving something meaningful behind. Part 3. Coming home. The flight from Istanbul to Boston was long, about 14 hours with a connection in Munich. I'd splurged on business class using miles my parents had gifted me, so it was comfortable enough. But I still arrived exhausted, rumpled, and craving a real shower. Logan Airport was exactly as I remembered it. Busy, impersonal, fluorescently lit. I navigated through customs and immigration, collected my bags, and made my way out to the arrivals area. My mother had texted that she'd pick me up herself. I scanned the crowd holding signs and flowers, looking for her familiar face. It took me a moment to spot her, and when I did, my heart sank a little. She looked terrible. I don't mean that cruelly. My mother was a beautiful woman who'd always taken care of herself. But the woman standing there holding a small bouquet of flowers looked like she'd aged 10 years in 6 months. She was thinner, almost gaunt, with dark circles under her eyes that even her makeup couldn't hide. Her clothes, usually impeccably chosen, looked a size too big, like she'd lost weight rapidly. "Mom!" I called, waving. Her face lit up when she saw me, and suddenly she looked more like herself. She rushed over and pulled me into a tight hug. "Oh, Charlotte, let me look at you. You're so tan. And your hair. It's gotten so long. You look wonderful, darling. How was the flight?" We were both talking over each other, the way you do when you haven't seen someone you love for a long time. She helped me with my bags. I'd shipped most of my stuff home, but I still had a large suitcase and a backpack. We made our way to the parking garage, and that's when I really started to worry. She'd always been a careful driver, but now she seemed almost nervous, checking her mirrors constantly, gripping the wheel tightly. When we finally got on the highway heading west toward Wellesley, I decided to address what I was seeing. "Mom, are you okay? You seem tired." She glanced at me, then back at the road. "I'm fine, darling. Just been busy. You know how it is with the foundation board meetings, and we had that big gala last month. Plus, the kitchen renovation turned into more of a nightmare than we expected. Have you been sleeping enough? You've lost weight." "Just a little," she said dismissively. "I've been trying to eat better, that's all. Dr. Morrison suggested I cut back on carbs for my cholesterol." It was plausible, but something in her tone made me uneasy. "And Dad? How's he been?" There was a pause, just a beat too long. "He's fine. Busy with work. You know Robert, always managing something." "Is he home? I thought he'd come with you to the airport." "He had a meeting that ran late. He should be home by the time we get there." We fell into safer conversation after that. I told her about the dig, about the texts we'd found, about Dr. Simmons and the team. I told her about Turkey, about the food, about the landscape. I didn't mention Daniel. Somehow that felt too new, too fragile to share yet. She told me about the renovations, about her friends, about the garden, surface things, easy things. It was dark by the time we pulled into the long driveway of the Wellesley house. The exterior lights were on, making the white colonial revival glow like something from a magazine spread. Robert's Mercedes was in the garage. I could see it through the open door. "He beat us home," my mother said, sounding almost nervous. I was too tired to think much about it. I just wanted to shower, eat, and sleep in my own bed. We unloaded my bags, and my mother helped me carry them inside. The house smelled the way it always did. Fresh flowers, whatever essential oil my mother was currently favoring. Tonight it was lavender, and something cooking in the kitchen. "Dad?" I called out. "I'm home." He emerged from his study, and I felt a jolt of the same concern I'd felt seeing my mother. Robert was a big man, not fat, but substantial. 6'2", broad-shouldered, the kind of presence that filled a room. But he'd lost weight too. And there was something in his face, in his eyes, that seemed different. Harder, maybe. Tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. But he smiled when he saw me, and it seemed genuine. He pulled me into a hug. "Charlotte, welcome home." "How was Turkey?" "Amazing," I said into his shoulder. He smelled different. Not bad, just different, like he'd changed his cologne. "I want to hear all about it," he said, releasing me. "But first you must be starving." "Catherine, is dinner ready?" "Almost," my mother said. "Charlotte, why don't you go upstairs and freshen up? We'll eat in about 20 minutes. I was grateful for the suggestion. I dragged my suitcase up the stairs to my old bedroom. My mother had preserved it exactly as I'd left it when I went to college, which was both touching and a little strange. Band posters I'd loved at 18, a bookshelf full of young adult novels, a desk where I'd written my college essays. I took a quick shower in my private bathroom, one of the luxuries of growing up with money, and changed into clean clothes. I looked at myself in the mirror. My mother was right. I was incredibly tan from 6 months in the Turkish sun. My hair had sun-bleached streaks through it. I looked healthy, happy, different from the slightly aimless girl who'd left 6 months ago. I headed back downstairs, following the smell of my mother's cooking to the kitchen. She'd set the table in the breakfast nook rather than the formal dining room. A good sign. The formal dining room was for guests and tension. Dinner started normally enough. The roasted chicken was perfect, the potatoes creamy and rich, the green beans crisp. My mother had even made apple pie for dessert. I ate like I'd been starving, which in a way I had been. 6 months of camp food will do that to you. I told them more about the dig, pulling out my phone to show them photos. Ancient ruins glowing in golden hour light. The team covered in dust and smiling. Close-ups of text fragments and pottery. My mother asked questions, seeming genuinely interested. Robert listened more than he spoke. But that was normal for him. He'd always been the quieter one, content to let others talk. But I could feel something under the surface, a tension in the air that I couldn't quite name. The way my mother's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. The way Robert kept checking his phone, something he'd normally never do at the dinner table. He'd always been strict about that rule. "So," my mother said brightly as she served pie, "what are your plans now? Are you going back to the publishing house?" "I'm not sure," I admitted. "They said my position was only held for 3 months, so I'd be starting fresh anyway. Dr. Simmons asked me to come back next summer for the next season of The Dig. I might look for work that's more flexible, maybe freelance editing or something." "You could always stay here for a while," my mother said. "Take your time figuring things out. We've missed having you in the house." I glanced at Robert, expecting him to chime in with his usual encouragement of independence, but he was staring at his plate. "Maybe for a few weeks," I said carefully. "I mean, my lease in New York is up in December anyway." I was already planning to look for a new place. Maybe I could work from here for a bit, save some money. "That would be wonderful," my mother said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. Robert stood abruptly. "I need to make a phone call. Excuse me." He left without waiting for a response. My mother watched him go, something flickering across her face too quickly for me to read. "Is everything okay?" I asked. "Mom, seriously, you both seem off. Did something happen?" She was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her debating with herself about what to tell me. "Charlotte, your father, Robert, he's been under a lot of stress at work. There have been some complications with the business. Nothing for you to worry about, but it's been taking a toll on him." "What kind of complications?" "I don't understand all the details. You know I never got involved in that side of things. But there's been some issue with investors, something about the markets. He's been working very long hours, trying to sort it all out." That explained the weight loss, the tension. "Is the company in trouble?" "I don't think so. Robert says it's just a rough patch. These things happen in investment management. But darling, he doesn't like to talk about it, so maybe don't bring it up unless he does." It was a reasonable request, but it left me uneasy. In my family, we didn't hide things. At least I'd never thought we did. I helped my mother clean up after dinner, and then I genuinely couldn't keep my eyes open anymore. Jet lag was hitting me hard. "I'm sorry, Mom, but I think I need to sleep. I'm dead on my feet." "Of course, darling. Get some rest. We'll have plenty of time to catch up over the next few days." I hugged her goodnight. She held on a little longer than normal, and when she pulled back, her eyes were bright with tears. "I'm so glad you're home," she said softly. "Me too, Mom." I went upstairs, brushed my teeth, and fell into my childhood bed. Despite the jet lag and exhaustion, despite the strange undercurrents I'd sensed at dinner, I fell asleep feeling grateful. I was home. I was safe. My family was here. I had no idea how naive that feeling was. Part 4. The Unraveling. I woke up the next morning disoriented, unsure where I was for a few confused moments. The ceiling was wrong, the light was wrong, and then I remembered. Home. Wellesley. My childhood bedroom. I checked my phone. Almost noon. I'd slept for nearly 14 hours. There were a few messages from Daniel. He'd arrived safely in London. His flat was a disaster after being empty for 6 months. He missed me. I smiled and sent a quick reply. Downstairs, I found my mother in the kitchen. She was dressed for the day in slacks and a cashmere sweater, her hair and makeup done, but she still had that gaunt, tired look. "Good afternoon, Sleeping Beauty," she said with a smile. "Coffee? Please. I can't believe I slept so long. Jet lag. Your father had to leave early for work, but he said to tell you he'll be home for dinner." I accepted the coffee gratefully and settled at the kitchen island. "What are your plans for today?" "I have a board meeting at the museum at 2, but I'm free this morning. Want to go for a walk? The fall colors are beautiful this year." We spent a pleasant morning walking through our neighborhood. The houses in Wellesley were stunning this time of year, surrounded by maple trees blazing red and gold. We talked about lighter things, her garden plans for next spring, mutual friends and what they'd been up to, her frustration with the kitchen renovation. I was careful not to mention Robert, or work, or money. But I was watching her carefully, and I noticed things. The way she'd flinch slightly when her phone buzzed. The way she seemed distracted, like only half her attention was on our conversation. The way she kept checking the time, even though her meeting wasn't for hours. "Mom," I finally said as we circled back toward the house, "I know you said not to worry, but I am worried. About you, specifically. Are you sure you're okay? Have you seen a doctor recently?" She stopped walking and turned to face me. For a moment, I thought she might actually tell me the truth, whatever it was, but then she just smiled and patted my cheek. "You're sweet to worry, but I promise I'm fine. Just getting older, darling. That's all." She left for her meeting around 1:30, and I had the house to myself. I took the opportunity to really look around, searching for clues to what felt so off. The renovation work was obvious. The kitchen was beautiful, all new appliances and marble countertops. But there were other changes too. Small things. Some of the artwork I remembered from childhood was gone, replaced with different pieces or blank walls. My mother's study, which had always been full of books and photos, seemed sparser. I went to Robert's study, normally off limits, but I figured I was an adult now, and anyway, I was just curious. The door was unlocked. Inside, everything looked normal. Large desk, leather chair, built-in bookshelves, filing cabinets. But when I looked closer, I noticed something strange. The filing cabinets, which had always been full of neatly labeled files, were mostly empty. Not just organized, empty. Like someone had cleared them out. I opened Robert's desk drawers, feeling guilty but too curious to stop. More emptiness. Where were all his papers, his files, all the documentation of running a successful business? Even in the digital age, Robert had always kept physical copies of important documents. I remembered him telling me once that you should never trust entirely to the cloud. I was about to leave when I noticed something wedged behind one of the desk drawers. An envelope that had apparently fallen down. I pulled it out. It was addressed to Robert from someone named Marcus Chen at a law firm in Boston. The postmark was from 3 months ago. I shouldn't have opened it. I knew that even as I was doing it, but something in my gut told me this was important. Inside was a letter. Formal and cold. "Dear Mr. Harrison, this letter serves as formal notice that Henderson and Associates has been retained by the Securities and Exchange Commission in relation to their investigation into Harrison Investment Management. As we discussed, we strongly advise you to retain separate legal counsel immediately. The SEC's preliminary findings suggest potential violations of securities laws, including but not limited to misappropriation of client funds and fraudulent reporting. While we cannot comment on the likelihood of criminal charges at this time, we advise you to take this matter with the utmost seriousness. Please contact this office at your earliest convenience to discuss next steps." I read it 3 times, my hands shaking. SEC investigation, misappropriation of funds, fraudulent reporting, criminal charges. Robert wasn't just under stress. He was being investigated for financial crimes. I put the letter back where I'd found it, my mind racing. Did my mother know about this? She must know, right? But why hadn't she told me? And more importantly, what did this mean for our family? I spent the rest of the afternoon trying to act normal, but my mind was spinning. I researched SEC investigations on my laptop, trying to understand what this might mean. The results were terrifying. If Robert had actually misappropriated client funds, essentially stealing from his investors, he could face serious prison time. And there would be financial penalties, potentially massive ones. My mother came home around 5, looking exhausted from her meeting. I wanted to confront her, to ask her if she knew, but I couldn't find the words. How do you ask your mother if she knows her husband is a criminal? Robert came home at 7, later than he'd said. He looked haggard. His expensive suit wrinkled, his tie loosened. But he made an effort to smile when he saw me. "Charlotte, sorry I'm late. How was your day?" "Good," I lied. "Slept in, went for a walk with Mom. Just taking it easy." Good. You should rest after all that traveling." Dinner was awkward. None of us seemed to know what to say. My mother pushed food around her plate. Robert ate mechanically, checking his phone constantly despite his own no phones rule. I tried to make conversation, but it felt forced. Finally, Robert set down his fork and looked at me directly. "Charlotte, I'm glad you're home. But I need to tell you something. Things are complicated right now. With the business, I'm dealing with some challenges, and the next few months might be difficult." I held his gaze. What kind of challenges? He glanced at my mother, then back at me. There's been some disagreement with certain clients about investment strategies and returns. It's being sorted out, but in the meantime, things are stressful. I wanted you to know so you wouldn't worry if you see us seeming preoccupied. It was such a careful, sanitized version of the truth. Disagreement with clients. Being sorted out. He was lying to me, and he was doing it smoothly, calmly, the way someone does when they've had practice. "Is that why you've both lost weight?" I asked. "Why Mom seems so tired?" "It's been a stressful few months," he admitted, "but it's going to be fine. These things always work out." I wanted to call him out, to tell him I'd found the letter, that I knew he was being investigated. But something stopped me. Maybe it was cowardice. Maybe it was the hope that if I didn't acknowledge it out loud, it wouldn't be real. "Okay," I said instead. "If you need anything, I'm here." He smiled, and this time it seemed genuine. "Thank you, Charlotte." That means a lot. We finished dinner in silence. Part 5. The truth comes out. Over the next few days, I watched my parents carefully while trying not to be obvious about it. I noticed more things that worried me. Phone calls that would make Robert leave the room, speaking in low, tense voices. My mother spending hours on her laptop, looking at documents with a furrowed brow. Expensive items disappearing from the house. I realized the antique mirror that had been in the front hall was gone, as was the sculpture that used to sit in the living room. They were selling things. Quietly, gradually, but definitely selling things. I did more research. Harrison Investment Management had been a relatively small firm, managing money for about 50 high-net-worth clients. According to what I could find online, the firm had a good reputation, or at least it had until about 8 months ago, when things seemed to go quiet. No news articles, no updates on their website, which was actually offline now. I found a few references to lawsuits filed by former clients, claiming losses and demanding their money back. The details were vague, but the picture they painted was damning. Daniel called one evening while I was alone in the house. My parents had gone to see Robert's lawyer, or at least that's what they'd told me. "How's it going?" he asked. "Are you settling back in?" I told him everything. About my parents' appearance, about the strange atmosphere in the house, about the letter I'd found. It felt good to tell someone, to not carry it alone anymore. "Christ, Charlotte," he said when I finished. "That's serious. Have you asked them directly what's going on?" "I'm scared to," I admitted. "What if it's as bad as I think it is? What if Robert really did steal from his clients? What does that mean for my mother? For me?" "You can't control what's already happened," Daniel said gently. "But you deserve to know the truth. They're your family." "I know. I just need to find the right moment." That moment came sooner than I expected. 2 days later, I came home from a coffee run to find my mother sitting at the kitchen table crying. Not just tearing up, full-on sobbing, her face in her hands, her whole body shaking. "Mom!" I dropped the coffee and rushed to her side. "Mom, what happened? Are you okay? Is it Dad?" She looked up at me, and the despair in her eyes made my stomach drop. "Charlotte, I'm so sorry. I should have told you sooner. I didn't want to ruin your time in Turkey, and then when you came home I thought maybe we could have a few more days of normal before everything fell apart. But I can't keep pretending." "Mom, breathe. Just breathe. Tell me what's going on." She took a shaky breath, wiping at her face with a tissue. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Your father, Robert. He's being charged with securities fraud. The SEC investigation found that he'd been running a Ponzi scheme for the last 3 years. He was using money from new clients to pay returns to existing clients. And he was falsifying account statements. Charlotte. He stole nearly $40 million. The kitchen seemed to tilt. $40 million. When the market crashed last year, she continued, voice breaking, he couldn't maintain the fiction anymore. Clients started withdrawing their money, and there wasn't enough to cover it. He kept thinking he could fix it, that he could make up the losses, but he just dug the hole deeper. "Did you know?" I asked. "Did you know what he was doing?" "Not until 6 months ago," she said. "Right before you left for Turkey. He finally told me when the SEC started investigating. Charlotte, I wanted to tell you. But you were so excited about the dig, and I hoped, maybe somehow it would all be resolved before you came home." $40 million, I repeated, trying to wrap my mind around it. Where did it go? How does someone steal $40 million? Bad investments, trying to cover the losses. Some of it went to maintaining our lifestyle. The house, your education, our expenses. We've been living beyond what the business actually made for years. She laughed bitterly. I thought we were wealthy. Turns out we were just spending other people's money. What's going to happen? Robert's lawyer is trying to negotiate a plea deal. But he'll go to prison, Charlotte. There's no way around that. 5 years minimum, maybe 10 or more. And we'll lose everything. The house is mortgaged to the hilt. That's going to the creditors. My inheritance from my family is protected in a trust, thank God. But that's not much. Maybe enough to rent a small apartment, live modestly. Everything else has to go to pay back the clients he defrauded. I felt numb. My whole childhood, everything I'd thought I knew about my family, about my life, was built on stolen money. The nice schools, the vacations, the comfortable apartment in New York, all of it paid for with funds that belonged to other people. Does he feel bad? I asked. Is he sorry? My mother was quiet for a moment. I think he's sorry he got caught. I'm not sure he's sorry for what he did. He keeps talking about how everyone in finance cuts corners, how he was just unlucky, how if the market hadn't crashed he would have made it all back. She looked at me with red, swollen eyes. I don't think I know him at all, Charlotte. 15 years of marriage, and I don't know who I've been living with. We sat together in silence. I held my mother's hand, both of us crying now, mourning the life we'd thought we had. There's more, she said finally. Your biological father, James. Robert made me promise never to tell you this, but I can't keep secrets anymore. I can't. James didn't die in a car accident, Charlotte. My breath caught. What? He left us. When you were 6, he had an affair, fell in love with someone else, and he left. Just walked away from both of us. I was devastated, humiliated. When Robert came along and wanted to marry me, wanted to adopt you, I let him. And Robert suggested we tell people James had died because it was easier than explaining abandonment. Less questions, less pity. So my father is alive? The words felt strange in my mouth. I don't know. I haven't heard from him in 19 years. He signed away his parental rights when Robert adopted you. For all I know, he could be dead by now. But Charlotte, you deserve to know the truth. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my history, my family, all of it was lies. My father hadn't died tragically. He'd abandoned me. My stepfather wasn't a successful businessman. He was a thief. My comfortable childhood hadn't been funded by hard work and smart investments. It had been funded by fraud. I need some air, I said, standing abruptly. I need to go for a walk or something. I need to process this. Charlotte. I'm not angry at you, Mom. I just need some space. I'll be back. I grabbed my jacket and left before she could respond. I walked without direction, letting my feet carry me through the neighborhood I'd grown up in. These beautiful houses, these perfect lawns. How many of them were built on lies, too? How many families had secrets like ours? I found myself at the town green, sitting on a bench as the sun set. I called Daniel because I didn't know who else to call. He's a criminal, I said when he answered. Robert. He ran a Ponzi scheme. He stole $40 million and now he's going to prison and we're going to lose everything. Daniel listened as I poured out the whole story. The fraud, the lies about my biological father, the complete destruction of everything I'd thought my life was. Come to London, he said when I finally ran out of words. Just pack a bag and come to London. Stay with me for a while. You need distance from all of this. I can't leave my mother. She's falling apart. Then bring her too, or come for just a week. Charlotte, you need to take care of yourself. This isn't your responsibility to fix. But it's my family. I know, but you're allowed to step back. You're allowed to be angry and hurt and confused. We talked for another hour. By the time we hung up, I felt marginally more stable. I headed back to the house as darkness fell completely. Part 6. The Confrontation. Robert's car was in the driveway when I got back. I steeled myself and went inside. I found them both in the living room. My mother on the couch, looking small and fragile. Robert in his chair, a glass of scotch in his hand, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Charlotte, he said when he saw me. Your mother told me she talked to you. You're a thief, I said. The words came out colder than I'd intended. You stole millions of dollars from people who trusted you. It's not that simple. Yes, it is that simple. You took money that wasn't yours. You lied about it. And you used that stolen money to fund our lives. Do you have any idea how that makes me feel? Everything I have, everything I've done, it's all tainted now. Charlotte, I never meant for this to happen. I made some bad investments, and I thought I could recover the losses. I was trying to protect my clients. By stealing from them? By lying to them? His jaw tightened. You don't understand the pressure, the expectations. I built that firm from nothing. I made people wealthy. And when things went bad, I was just trying to fix it. By committing fraud. It's more complicated than that. The financial industry, the way the system works, it's all rigged anyway. I was just playing the same game everyone else plays. No, I said firmly. Everyone else doesn't run Ponzi schemes. Everyone else doesn't steal $40 million. You did this. You made these choices. Don't you dare judge me, Robert said, his voice rising. You've lived a privileged life because of me. The best schools, the best opportunities. Do you think that came from nowhere? I provided for this family. With stolen money. I provided for you. He was shouting now, standing up, his face red. I took you in when your real father abandoned you. I gave you my name. I paid for everything you ever needed or wanted. And this is the gratitude I get? Robert, my mother started, but he cut her off. No, Catherine. She needs to understand. I'm not the villain here. I'm a man who made mistakes trying to take care of his family. Yes, I broke some rules, but I did it for us. You did it for yourself, I shot back. You did it because you were greedy and you thought you wouldn't get caught. Don't pretend this was noble. Don't pretend you were some kind of martyr. I saved this family, he said, his voice low and dangerous now. When I met your mother, she was a mess. A single mother with a small child, living off her family's charity, humiliated by your father's abandonment. I gave her back her dignity. I gave you a father, and I gave us all a good life. A lie, I said. You gave us a lie. Something in him snapped. I saw it happen, saw the careful control he'd always maintained just disintegrate. He moved toward me. And for the first time in my life, I was afraid of him. You ungrateful little... Robert, stop! My mother screamed. But he didn't stop. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in painfully. I don't need lectures from a 25-year-old who's never had to make hard choices in her life. You don't know anything about the real world. You've been coddled and protected and given every advantage. And now you stand there judging me? Let go of me, I said, trying to pull away. His grip tightened. You think you're better than me? You're just like me. You took the money. You enjoyed the benefits. You're complicit in all of this. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. You never asked questions. You never wondered how we afforded everything. You just took and never thought about where it came from. He was right, and that made it worse. I had never questioned our lifestyle. I just accepted it as normal, as something I deserved. I'm leaving, I said. I can't be here right now. Where are you going to go? He asked mockingly. You have no money of your own. The apartment in New York. I paid for that. You think you can just walk away from this family? From me? After everything I've done for you? Robert, let her go, my mother said, standing up. This isn't helping. Shut up, Catherine, he snapped, and I saw my mother flinch. That was when something in me broke too. All the fear, all the hurt, all the betrayal. It crystallized into rage. Don't talk to her like that, I said. I'll talk to her however I want. This is my house. It's not your house. It's not your money. Nothing about this life is yours. It's all stolen. You're a criminal. And soon everyone will know it. He raised his hand. I saw it happening but couldn't quite believe it. Robert had never hit anyone in his life, had never even come close. But his hand was coming toward my face, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. The slap caught me across the cheek, hard enough to snap my head to the side. I tasted blood. I'd bitten my tongue. My mother screamed. Robert stepped back, looking shocked at what he'd done. Charlotte, I didn't wait to hear the rest. I ran. Out of the living room, out the front door, down the driveway. I heard my mother calling after me, but I didn't stop. I just ran. I ended up at my car, parked on the street. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely get the key in the ignition. My cheek throbbed. I could see in the rearview mirror that it was already turning red, a perfect handprint marking my face. I drove, no destination in mind, just away. Away from that house. Away from those people. Away from the ruins of my family. I ended up in a parking lot near the Wellesley Town Center, sitting in my car as the shock wore off and the tears came. Great heaving sobs that shook my whole body. My phone buzzed. My mother. "Charlotte, please come back. I'm so sorry. Please." Then Robert. "I shouldn't have hit you. I'm under tremendous stress. Please come home so we can talk." Then my mother again. "Where are you? I'm worried. Please just let me know you're safe." I turned off my phone. Part 7. Aftermath. I sat in that parking lot for over an hour, trying to figure out what to do. Eventually, I turned my phone back on and called Daniel. "Charlotte? It's late there. Are you okay?" "No," I said. "Can I take you up on that offer to come to London?" "What happened?" I told him about the confrontation, about Robert hitting me, about the things he'd said, about all of it. "Jesus Christ, Charlotte. Yes, get on a plane right now. Tonight if you can. Do you need me to book you a ticket?" "I can do it. I needed to hear your voice. I needed to know there was somewhere to go." "You always have somewhere to go. You have me. Come to London, stay as long as you need. We'll figure everything else out later." I booked a flight for the next morning, the earliest I could get. Then I checked into a hotel near the airport. A nice one, using a credit card that was in my name but paid for by Robert. The irony wasn't lost on me. I looked at myself in the hotel bathroom mirror. The handprint on my face had darkened to an angry red, purple already blooming along the edges. Physical proof of everything that had happened. I took a photo. I wasn't sure why. Evidence, maybe. Or just a way to document this moment. The moment my family truly fell apart. My mother had called 6 more times. I finally texted her, "I'm safe. I'm at a hotel. I'm flying to London tomorrow. I need space." Her response came immediately. "I understand. I'm so sorry about what happened. Please be safe. I love you." Robert hadn't called again after that first text. I wondered if he'd called his lawyer instead. If he was worried I'd press charges for assault. I wouldn't. What good would that do? He was already going to prison for fraud. What was one more charge? I didn't sleep much that night. I kept replaying the confrontation, the things Robert had said. The worst part was that he wasn't entirely wrong. I had benefited from the fraud. I had lived well on stolen money. I hadn't asked questions, but I had been a child for most of it. And later, a trusting adult who believed her parents were honest people. Was I really complicit? Or was I just another one of Robert's victims? The flight to London the next morning felt surreal. I was running away, abandoning my mother in her crisis. But I couldn't stay. I couldn't be in that house with Robert. Couldn't pretend everything was fine when my face still bore the mark of his hand. I sent my mother an email from the airport. "Mom, I'm sorry I'm leaving like this, but I can't be there right now. What Robert did, what he's been doing, it's too much. I need distance to process everything. Please take care of yourself. Consider leaving him. You don't have to stay with someone who would hit your daughter. I love you." Her response came as I was boarding. "I understand. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. But you're right to go. Be happy, darling. You deserve that much. I love you so much." Part 8. London. Daniel met me at Heathrow. I'd warned him about my face, so he was prepared. But I still saw the anger flash in his eyes when he saw the bruise. "I'm going to kill him," he said, pulling me into a hug. "Get in line," I muttered into his shoulder. His flat in Bloomsbury was small but charming. A one-bedroom in a Victorian building with creaky floors and windows that overlooked a quiet street. It was nothing like the grand house in Wellesley, but it felt safe. We spent that first day just existing together. Daniel made tea, proper British tea with milk, and we sat on his couch while I told him everything in detail. He listened without interrupting, just holding my hand. "What are you going to do?" he finally asked. "I have no idea. Everything I thought I had, my savings, my safety net, it's all tainted. Do I even have a right to keep it? Shouldn't it all go back to the people Robert stole from?" "That's not your decision to make," Daniel said gently. "The courts will figure out what happens to the assets. You're not responsible for your stepfather's crimes." "But I benefited from them." "You were a child, and even as an adult, you didn't know what he was doing." "You can't blame yourself for not knowing something that was deliberately hidden from you." Intellectually, I knew he was right. Emotionally, I felt complicit. Over the next few days, I tried to settle into a routine. Daniel went to work at the university, and I spent my days walking around London, thinking, trying to figure out what came next. My mother and I texted occasionally. Brief updates. Robert's lawyer was negotiating a plea deal, 7 years in prison, full restitution to the victims. The house would be sold. She was looking for an apartment in a less expensive part of Massachusetts. She never mentioned leaving him. Despite everything, the fraud, the violence, she was standing by him. I didn't understand it, but it wasn't my choice to make. About a week after I arrived in London, I got a call from an unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Charlotte? This is Detective Morrison from the Wellesley Police Department. I'm calling about an incident that occurred on October 3rd at your family's residence." My stomach dropped. "I didn't file a report." "No, but your neighbor did." Mrs. Bayes. Chen next door heard shouting and what sounded like someone being struck. She called 911, but by the time we arrived, the house was empty. "We've been trying to reach you for follow-up." "I'm in London. I left the next day." "I see. Ms. Whitmore Harrison, I need to ask you some questions about what happened that night. Are you willing to speak with me?" I thought about saying no, about just hanging up and pretending this wasn't happening. But in the end, I told him the truth. About the confrontation, about Robert hitting me, about everything. "Would you be willing to press charges?" he asked when I finished. "He's already going to prison for fraud. What difference would it make?" "It would make a difference to us. Domestic violence is serious, even if it only happened once. And it would be on his record." "I need to think about it." "That's fine. But Ms. Whitmore Harrison, what he did was wrong. You know that, right? No matter what stress he was under, no matter what mistakes you think you made, no one has the right to hit you." "I know," I said quietly. After I hung up, I sat for a long time thinking about what to do. In the end, I decided not to press charges. Not because I forgave Robert, I don't think I ever will, but because I wanted to move forward, not stay trapped in this nightmare. Part 9. Moving forward. Weeks passed. I stayed in London, living in Daniel's small flat, trying to figure out who I was outside of my family's wealth and status. It was harder than I expected. I'd always thought I was independent, but I'd never truly been on my own. There had always been a safety net, always been the knowledge that if things went wrong, my parents could help. Now that safety net was gone, and I felt unmoored. I started therapy, Daniel's suggestion. A therapist in Bloomsbury who specialized in family trauma. Dr. Patel was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who called me out when I tried to minimize what I'd been through. "You experienced multiple traumas," she said during our 3rd session. "You discovered your entire family history was a lie. You learned your stepfather committed massive fraud. You were physically assaulted by someone you trusted. Those are all significant events that would affect anyone. But other people have it worse," I protested. "I grew up privileged. I can't complain about—" "Privilege doesn't protect you from trauma," she interrupted. "And your pain doesn't diminish someone else's. You're allowed to be hurt and angry and confused." Those sessions helped. Slowly, I started to process what had happened, to separate my own identity from my family's actions, to understand that I could acknowledge the benefits I'd received while still condemning the way they were obtained. In December, Robert's plea deal was finalized. 7 years in federal prison. He would serve at least 5 before being eligible for parole. The house sold quickly. A young tech executive and his family bought it. My mother moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Worcester, closer to where she'd grown up. She sent me photos. It was a nice enough place, but it was such a stark contrast to the Wellesley estate that it broke my heart. "This is better," she texted. "I don't need all that space anyway. And I can visit Robert every weekend." She was still standing by him, still married to him. I didn't understand it, but I was starting to accept that I didn't have to understand. It was her life, her choice. I started freelancing, editing work for academic publications, translating Latin texts for classical scholars. It didn't pay much, but it was mine. Money I'd earned with my own skills, not money tainted by someone else's crimes. Daniel and I grew closer. Living together, even in cramped quarters, showed me sides of him I hadn't seen in Turkey. His patience when I had bad days. His terrible cooking skills. The way he'd leave books open on every surface. The way he'd pull me close at night when I couldn't sleep. "I love you," he said one evening in January. We were cooking dinner together, or rather, I was cooking while he chopped vegetables with questionable technique. I'd known it was coming. I'd known how I felt too. But hearing the words still made my breath catch. "I love you too," I said. He grinned, that boyish smile that had first made me notice him back in Turkey. "Good. Because I was rather hoping you'd stay. In London. With me. Not forever if you don't want to, but maybe for a while longer? I don't have a visa for longer than 6 months. We could figure that out. You could apply for a student visa, take some courses, or we could..." He trailed off, suddenly looking nervous. "Could what?" "We could get married," he said in a rush. "I know it's fast, and I know you're dealing with a lot, and I don't want you to feel pressured. But Charlotte, I'm serious about this. About us. If you wanted to stay, if you wanted to build a life here, I would be thrilled." I thought about it. About London. About this flat. About Daniel. About starting fresh in a place that had no connection to my old life, my old family, my old identity. "Ask me again in 6 months," I said. "If you still want to, then..." "If I still want to, then, we'll talk about it seriously." "That's fair," he said, and kissed me. Part 10. 1 year later. It's been a year since I came home from Turkey. A year since that terrible night with Robert. A year since my life fell apart and had to be rebuilt from scratch. Robert is in prison. My mother visits him every weekend without fail. She seems not happy exactly, but more at peace than she was before. She's working part-time at a local library, reconnecting with old friends, living a simpler life. We talk every week on video chat. Our relationship is different now. More honest, but also more careful. We're both still healing. I never did press charges. The detective wasn't happy about it, but he understood. Sometimes the best closure is just moving forward. I'm still in London. I did take courses, a postgraduate certificate in ancient languages at University College London. I'm considering a full master's program. My freelance work has grown. I have regular clients now, enough to pay my share of the rent and expenses. I'm not wealthy, but I'm independent in a way I never was before. Daniel and I got married last month. A small ceremony at a registry office in Camden, followed by dinner with a dozen close friends. Nothing like the elaborate wedding I might have had in my old life. But it was perfect, real and honest and ours. I'm working on a book. A memoir, maybe, or something like it. The story of a girl who grew up privileged and perfect, only to discover that her entire life was built on lies. I'm not sure if anyone will want to publish it, but writing it has been therapeutic. I found my biological father, James Whitmore. He's alive, living in Colorado with his second wife, and their 2 kids. My half-siblings, technically. I found him through social media, sent a careful message. He responded with surprise and what seemed like genuine remorse. We've exchanged a few emails. He explained his side, how young and overwhelmed he'd felt, how he'd made a terrible choice that he's regretted every day since. He asked if I'd ever want to meet. I told him maybe someday, but not yet. I'm not ready for that. The victims of Robert's fraud are slowly being repaid through the liquidation of assets. They won't get everything back, they never do in these cases, but they'll get something. I've thought about reaching out to them, apologizing on behalf of my family, but Dr. Patel advised against it. That's not your burden to carry, she said. You can acknowledge harm was done without taking responsibility for it. Sometimes I still feel guilty. I look at my education, my opportunities, all the advantages I had, and I know they were paid for with stolen money. But I'm learning to live with that complexity, to acknowledge the harm while still moving forward with my life. My mother asked me recently if I ever regret coming home that day. If I wish I'd stayed in Turkey longer, stayed ignorant of the truth. No, I told her honestly. It was terrible, and I wouldn't want to go through it again. But I needed to know. Living a lie isn't living at all. The truth destroyed the life I thought I had. But in its place, I'm building something real. Something honest. Something mine. And that's worth more than any amount of stolen money could ever buy. Epilogue. Reflections. When people ask me about that time, and they do, because Robert's case made the news, because fraud scandals always draw attention, I try to explain what it's like to have your entire understanding of reality shift overnight. It's like those optical illusion pictures, where you're looking at one thing, and then suddenly your perspective shifts, and you see something completely different. The image doesn't change, but your understanding of it does. You can never unsee the new reality. That's what happened to me. I came home from Turkey thinking I was returning to my safe, comfortable life. Instead, I came home to the truth, that safety had always been an illusion, that comfort had been purchased with other people's money, that the man I'd called father for nearly 2 decades was capable of both massive fraud and personal violence. People always want to know if I saw signs, if I suspected anything. The truth is, I didn't. Or maybe I did, and I chose not to look too closely. That's the thing about family secrets. Everyone has a role in keeping them. Even the people who don't know the full truth are often unconsciously helping to maintain the fiction. I think about Robert sometimes, in prison in Pennsylvania. I wonder if he's sorry, truly sorry, not just for getting caught, but for what he did. I wonder if he thinks about me, about that night, about the look on my face when his hand connected with my cheek. I haven't spoken to him since that night. He's written me letters. My mother forwards them, but I haven't opened them. Maybe someday I will. Maybe someday I'll be ready to hear whatever he has to say. But not yet. What I've learned in this year is that family is complicated, that love and betrayal can coexist, that you can grieve for a relationship while also acknowledging it was built on lies. That healing isn't linear. Some days I feel fine, strong, ready to take on the world, and other days I'm back to being that frightened girl running down a dark driveway with a handprint burning on her face. I've also learned that I'm stronger than I thought, that I can build a life without a safety net, that I can love and be loved honestly, without the performance and pretense that colored so much of my childhood. Dr. Pui 5. Simmons has asked me to come back to Turkey this summer for another season at the dig. I'm considering it. It would mean leaving Daniel for a few months, but he understands. He knows I need to keep moving forward, keep building my own identity separate from everything that happened. Daniel jokes that I should write a guide, How to Rebuild Your Life After Discovering Your Stepfather is a Criminal. But in some ways, that's what this narrative is. A guide, or at least a map. A way of saying, this happened to me, and I survived. And here's how. There's no happy ending here. Not really. Robert is still in prison. The victims are still dealing with their losses. My mother is still living in a small apartment, still visiting her husband every weekend. Still holding on to whatever pieces of their marriage she can salvage. My biological father is still a stranger with regrets. But there's a real ending. An honest one. And that's something. I'm Charlotte Whitmore Harrison Reeves now. That's a mouthful of names, each one representing a different chapter of my life. Whitmore for my biological father, the man who left. Harrison for my stepfather, the man who lied. Reeves for my husband, the man who saw me at my worst and loved me anyway. I'm building a new life in London, brick by brick. Some days are hard. Some days I still feel like that lost girl in the Logan Airport arrivals area, looking for her mother's face in the crowd, not knowing that everything was about to change. But most days, I feel like myself. My real self, not the polished, privileged version I was raised to be. I'm messier now, more complicated. I make my own money, pay my own bills, make my own mistakes. I have student loan debt. Imagine that, taking out loans for my master's program when I grew up in a house with 6 bedrooms and a pool. But it's mine. This life is mine. And that makes all the difference. If there's anything I want people to take from this story, it's this. The truth will always come out eventually. And when it does, you have a choice. You can cling to the comfortable lies, or you can face the uncomfortable truth and rebuild from there. I chose truth. It cost me everything I thought I had, but it gave me something better. Myself.